Ladies and gentlemen, today I want to talk to you about something powerful, not massive overnight transformations, not altering decisions made in a moment of inspiration, but small habits, tiny, daily actions that, when repeated, reshape the architecture of your brain, your behavior, and ultimately your life. Neuroscience now shows us something incredible. The brain is plastic. It changes in response to what you do consistently, not what you do occasionally, and that means the smallest behaviors, if done daily, can quite literally rewire who you are. So today, I'm going to share 6 small science-backed habits. They don't require you to move mountains, but they do require intention, and if you apply them consistently, they can and will change your life. Waking up at the same time every day might sound like a simple, even insignificant, habit, but it is one of the most powerful things you can do to create lasting change in your life. This habit, grounded deeply in neuroscience and human physiology, anchors your body and mind in stability. When you wake up at a consistent time each day, you're not just setting a routine, you're training your internal clock, or circadian rhythm, to work for you rather than against you. Your brain has a built-in timekeeping system located in the suprachiasmatic nucleus (SCN) of the hypothalamus. This system regulates the release of hormones, body temperature, sleep cycles, mood, focus, and energy levels. When you wake at irregular hours, your SCN receives inconsistent signals. That inconsistency leads to fatigue, brain fog, poor decision making, and even disruptions in metabolism and immune function. But when you rise at the same time each day, even on weekends, your body starts to predict and optimize for that rhythm. You wake up with more clarity, your energy stabilizes, and your mood becomes more balanced. At the neurochemical level, this regular wake time starts a beautiful cascade of events. Cortisol, often misunderstood as a stress hormone, is actually a crucial part of the wake-up process. When your body anticipates that you'll rise at 6:30 a.m. each day, it begins releasing cortisol naturally before you open your eyes. This cortisol helps elevate your alertness, supports metabolism, and prepares your brain to focus. Over time, this rhythm becomes automated, and the need for stimulants like caffeine diminishes significantly. You begin to feel more awake because your biology is aligned with your behavior. Moreover, your mental clarity improves not just in the morning, but throughout the entire day. A consistent wake-up time signals to your prefrontal cortex, the part of the brain responsible for decision making, planning, and self-control, that it can rely on structure. With that reliability comes enhanced willpower. You're more likely to stick to your goals, make better choices with food, resist distractions, and approach tasks with greater discipline and calm. There's also a psychological component at play. Waking up at the same time gives you a sense of control over your life. In a world that often feels unpredictable, this one act becomes your personal anchor. It's a declaration to yourself that you're in charge, that you respect your time and energy, and that you're investing in your own potential every single morning. One of the key reasons this habit changes lives is because it shifts your identity. When you consistently wake up early and on time, your self-perception begins to evolve. You no longer see yourself as someone who is reactive to life. You become someone who is proactive, deliberate, and focused. And once your identity changes, your habits start to fall in line. You make better decisions not because of motivation, but because they align with who you now believe you are. Of course, many people try to implement this habit and find it challenging, especially if they're used to hitting snooze, staying up late, or letting the weekend completely derail their rhythm. That's understandable, but it's also solvable. The key is consistency, not perfection. Even if you start by setting your alarm 15 minutes earlier and sticking to that for a week, your brain begins adjusting. Melatonin in production, the hormone responsible for sleep, starts adapting to your new schedule, allowing you to fall asleep earlier and sleep more deeply. The benefits compound. A consistent wake-up time improves your sleep quality, your mood, your hormonal balance, and even your ability to learn and remember. It's like pressing the reset button on your brain each day at the right time so that all your systems run smoother. Think of it as tuning a guitar when the strings are aligned. The music flows effortlessly. In truth, this habit is small only in action, not in impact. It is a cornerstone habit. When practiced consistently, it unlocks clarity, discipline, emotional stability, and energy. It doesn't require money, technology, or talent, only commitment. And once it becomes part of your life, you'll begin to notice something subtle but powerful. The rest of your day starts falling into place. You think clearer, you move with purpose, you begin to trust yourself more, and that trust creates momentum. Waking up at the same time each day is a signal to your mind and body that you're ready to own the day. It is the first win, and from that win, many others begin to follow. Exposing yourself to natural light within 30 minutes of waking may seem like a small and simple act, but it is one of the most profoundly effective ways to regulate your biology, sharpen your focus, and elevate your mental and physical energy throughout the day. This habit is grounded in hard neuroscience and physiology. The human body has evolved over thousands of years in response to the rhythms of natural light. Sunlight is not just something we see. It's something that signals our internal systems when to be alert, when to rest, and how to function at their best. When you expose your eyes to sunlight early in the morning, you activate a powerful signal to your brain's master clock, the suprachiasmatic nucleus escian. This clock governs your circadian rhythm, which regulates nearly every process in your body: hormone production, digestion, mood, metabolism, and even immune function. The escian relies primarily on light, particularly blue spectrum light from the sun, as its most important timing cue. When your eyes register that early natural light, your body gets a message that it's time to be awake, alert, and active. This light exposure does something remarkable. It triggers the timed release of cortisol and suppresses melatonin, the hormone that helps you feel sleepy. But unlike stress-induced cortisol spikes, this natural morning cortisol boost is healthy and necessary. It helps you feel energized, mentally clear, and physically ready for the day. Importantly, this also sets a countdown timer in your brain for the release of melatonin in later that night, about 14 to 16 hours later. In other words, getting morning light helps you fall asleep better at night. It's a loop, and light is what keeps that loop running smoothly. Unfortunately, many people start their day indoors with artificial lighting that is far too dim to properly activate this system. Even on a cloudy day, natural outdoor light is dozens of times brighter than indoor lighting. That's why stepping outside, without sunglasses ideally, is so important. It doesn't require staring directly at the sun, which should be avoided. Simply being outside and letting ambient sunlight reach your eyes is enough. Just 5 to 10 minutes of exposure in the morning can be transformative. On cloudy days, aim for 15 to 20 minutes. This habit alone can dramatically improve your sleep quality, energy levels, and overall cognitive function. Beyond physiology, there's a psychological effect at work here as well. Getting outside first thing in the morning breaks the cycle of reactivity. Instead of reaching for your phone, getting sucked into social media, or diving immediately into work stress, you give yourself a moment of presence. You anchor yourself in the natural world. You create space for stillness, and in that space, your nervous system has a chance to calm and regulate itself. Moreover, this exposure to morning light boosts dopamine, a neurotransmitter involved in motivation, focus, and mood. Dopamine is often thought of as the reward chemical, but in reality, it's more about anticipation and drive. When your brain receives light early in the day, It naturally increases dopamine signaling, giving you a sense of purpose, momentum, and the mental sharpness to engage with your goals. Over time, this consistent dopamine signaling can help shift you out of cycles of procrastination and fatigue. What's more, this habit doesn't cost anything. It doesn't require any special tools or equipment. It simply requires intention. Step outside, look toward the direction of the sun again, not directly at it, and let your eyes take in the light. You can combine this with another habit, such as walking, journaling, or even having your morning coffee outdoors. The point is to make it part of your rhythm. People who practice this habit consistently report better sleep, higher energy, improved focus, and greater emotional resilience. That's because the light you receive in the morning is not just about waking up. It's about signaling to your entire biology that it's time to live. You are giving your body and mind the clearest possible cue to activate all systems and move forward. It's important to note that if you miss this window, if you don't get light until hours after waking, you can start to feel groggy, out of sync, or mentally sluggish. Your body struggles to know what time it really is, and everything downstream becomes less efficient. That's why this habit is best done consistently, ideally within the first 30 minutes of waking. In a world that constantly pushes us towards screens, indoor routines, and artificial lighting, returning to natural rhythms may be the most powerful form of progress. Light is information. It tells your brain how to function, and when you give your body the right signals early in the day, everything else begins to align. A small act, stepping outside into the morning sun, can become one of the most life-enhancing behaviors you ever practice. It's free, it's fast, and it works. Doing one hard thing first each morning without distractions is a habit that has the power to completely rewire your mindset, productivity, and confidence. It's more than just a productivity hack. It's a psychological and neurological shift that trains your brain to take control of your day rather than being controlled by it. Most people begin their mornings in a reactive state, checking messages, scrolling social media, jumping from task to task without clarity. But by choosing to do one difficult, meaningful task first, you enter the day with intention, focus, and purpose. The reason this habit is so powerful lies in how the brain works in the first few hours after waking. Your mind is typically at its sharpest during the first 2-4 hours of the day, especially after you've had quality sleep and exposed yourself to morning light. During this time, your prefrontal cortex, the part of the brain responsible for decision making, focus, and problem solving, is functioning at peak capacity. This is your cognitive prime. When you reserve this time for your most important or challenging work, you're using your brain when it's most capable. But if you waste this window on low-value tasks or distractions, you dull your edge before the real work even begins. Doing one hard thing first doesn't mean overwhelming yourself with a massive project. It means choosing one thing that matters, something that pushes you, stretches you, or gets you closer to your goals, and giving it your full, undivided attention. That could be writing a difficult email, outlining a creative project, preparing a key presentation, or even committing to a focused workout. The point is that it's not something you can do passively. It demands focus, effort, and presence. When you take on that challenge first, you engage the brain's reward system in a very productive way. Completing a hard task early triggers the release of dopamine, which reinforces a sense of progress, motivation, and satisfaction. This dopamine feedback loop helps you build momentum for the rest of the day. You start thinking, if I could handle that, what else can I do? The confidence that comes from tackling something challenging first creates a mindset of capability, not avoidance. Additionally, this habit strengthens your mental discipline. Each time you choose to begin your day with effort over ease, you're reinforcing a pattern of self-leadership. You're teaching your brain to lean into resistance instead of running from it. Over time, this becomes part of your identity. You begin to see yourself as someone who doesn't wait for motivation. You act first and let motivation catch up. That identity shift is powerful. It separates those who drift through life from those who shape it deliberately. There's also a deep psychological freedom that comes from this habit. When you delay hard tasks, they don't go away. They stay in the back of your mind, creating low-level stress and anxiety. But when you face the hard thing first, you clear that mental weight early. You're no longer carrying that invisible burden throughout the day. Instead, your mind is free, your emotions are steadier, and your focus can move cleanly to the next thing. It's not just about productivity, it's about peace. Equally important is the idea of doing this hard thing without distractions . In our digital world, uninterrupted time is becoming rare, and that's exactly why it's so valuable. When you create a focused space for this task, no phone, no notifications, no multitasking, you give your brain the depth it needs to do meaningful work. Neuroscience tells us that every time you switch tasks, it takes your brain time to refocus. That time loss adds up. But when you stay in a deep state of concentration, you enter what's called a flow state. This is when your brain operates with the highest levels of efficiency and creativity. To make this habit stick, it helps to prepare the night before. Decide what your one hard thing will be ahead of time. Write it down, make sure it's clear and actionable. When you wake up, there's no decision fatigue. You know exactly what to do. This removes the friction and increases the likelihood that you'll follow through. You don't need to do 5 or 10 things first thing in the morning. Just one meaningful, focused task that nudges you forward. Over time, this builds self-respect. You begin to trust yourself to do what you say you'll do. That trust is everything. It's the foundation for building a disciplined, purpose-driven life. Ultimately, doing one hard thing first each morning trains your brain to chase growth, not comfort. It's a signal to your nervous system that you are capable, willing, and focused. It's how you take the steering wheel each day rather than letting the world drive you. And in that single, focused choice, you begin to change everything. Practicing 5 minutes of deep breathing or mindfulness each day may sound too small to matter, but in reality, it's one of the most transformative habits you can build for your mental clarity, emotional balance, and long-term health. In a world that constantly demands your attention, keeping you stimulated, stressed, and distracted, taking a few quiet minutes to reset your nervous system is no longer a luxury. It's a necessity. This habit doesn't require you to be a monk or spend hours in meditation. Just 5 intentional minutes can shift the way your entire day unfolds. Your breath is one of the only systems in the body that is both automatic and under your conscious control. That means you can use it as a bridge between your mind and body. When you slow down your breathing and bring your attention to it, you're doing more than relaxing, you're directly communicating with your nervous system. Specifically, you're activating the parasympathetic branch, often called the rest and digest system. This is the counterpart to the sympathetic fight or flight system, which dominates when you're anxious, rushing, or overwhelmed. By practicing deep breathing or mindfulness, you send a signal to your brain that it's safe, that it's okay to slow down, and that there's no immediate threat. Physiologically, this changes everything. Your heart rate slows, blood pressure drops, cortisol levels begin to stabilize. Your digestive system functions better, muscles release tension, and perhaps most importantly, your mind becomes clearer. You're no longer running from one thought to another, carried by the momentum of anxiety. Instead, you become present, aware, grounded, and that presence is powerful because from that state, you make better decisions. You respond rather than react. You gain access to a deeper part of your intelligence, one that often gets buried under noise and urgency. What's remarkable is that this shift happens quickly. You don't need hours of meditation. In fact, studies show that even just a few minutes of mindful breathing can significantly reduce stress markers in the body. The key is consistency. When practiced daily, even in small doses, it rewires your brain. Through a process called neuroplasticity, the brain begins to favor pathways associated with calm, clarity, and self-regulation. Areas like the prefrontal cortex, which governs focus and executive function, become stronger. At the same time, the amygdala, your brain's fear and stress center, begins to shrink in activity. This means that over time, you become more resilient, less reactive, and more in control of your emotional responses. Another benefit of this habit is the way it creates space in your day. We often rush from task to task, thought to thought, without ever pausing. That constant mental movement creates fatigue, even if you're not physically exerting yourself. But when you stop for 5 minutes to breathe deeply or sit in silence, you create a break in the noise. That break is not empty, it's restorative. It's like giving your brain a chance to catch up, to recalibrate, and to breathe. And from that space, creativity and insight often emerge. Many of the world's top performers, from athletes to CEO to artists, credit daily mindfulness as a secret to their clarity and performance. There are many ways to practice this. You can simply sit with your eyes closed and take slow, controlled breath. In through your nose for 4 seconds, hold for 4, out through your mouth for 6 to 8 seconds. You can follow the rhythm of your breath and gently return your attention to it whenever your mind wanders. You can use guided meditations, breathing apps, or even a timer and a quiet space. The method doesn't matter as much as the intention, to pause, to breathe, and to reconnect with yourself. Importantly, this habit also strengthens your ability to handle difficult emotions. When you become more aware of your breath, you also become more aware of your thoughts and feelings without immediately getting swept away by them. This awareness creates choice. Instead of reacting impulsively to stress, frustration, or fear, you create a gap, a moment where you can observe what's happening and choose how to respond. That's real power, that's emotional intelligence, and it begins with just 5 minutes a day. In the long term, the effects compound. People who practice daily mindfulness report lower anxiety, improved focus, better sleep, and more stable moods. They feel more grounded and in control, not because their lives are easier, but because they've trained their minds to stay centered in the middle of chaos. And that's the heart of it. This small habit builds inner strength. It's not about escaping your responsibilities or avoiding hard things. It's about building the inner calm and mental clarity to meet life head on, to respond with grace, to stay aligned with your values, and to remain present even in pressure. 5 minutes a day can be the difference between feeling like life is controlling you and knowing that you are in control of your own state. In a world full of noise, distraction, and pressure, those few quiet minutes of breathing and mindfulness become a sanctuary. A reset button, a practice of self-respect, and over time, they can truly change the way you live, think, and lead. Ending your day with reflection and gratitude may seem like a gentle, even trivial habit, but it is in fact one of the most powerful tools for emotional stability, long-term growth, and mental resilience in a world that often rushes from one thing to the next with little time to pause and process. Deliberately closing your day with intention can profoundly shift your mindset. It doesn't require hours of journaling or complex rituals, just a few minutes of honest reflection and an intentional focus on what went well, what you learned, and what you're thankful for. Throughout the day, our brains tend to latch onto the negative. It's a survival mechanism, an evolutionary bias designed to help us avoid threats and mistakes. But in modern life, this negativity bias often leads to a distorted sense of reality, where challenges and stress dominate our mental landscape while progress, joy, and small wins go unnoticed. That's where this nightly habit becomes so crucial. By pausing at the end of the day to reflect and express gratitude, you begin to train your brain to recognize the full picture, not just the pain points. Reflection gives you insight. It creates a structured space to ask yourself powerful questions. What did I do well today? What challenged me? What did I learn? What would I do differently next time? These questions aren't meant to judge. They are meant to build awareness. When you take even 5 minutes to go over your day, you begin to see patterns in your behavior, in your thoughts, in your energy. You begin to understand yourself better. That awareness is the foundation of change. You can't improve what you don't notice. And reflection helps you notice. At the same time, practicing gratitude rewires your emotional state. Gratitude is not about pretending everything is perfect. It's about acknowledging the good, even in the middle of challenges. Maybe it's something big, a supportive friend, a breakthrough in work, or time with family. Maybe it's something small, the warmth of your bed, a quiet moment of peace, a smile from a stranger. The point is to deliberately focus your attention on what's working, what's beautiful, what you're thankful for. This activates neural circuits associated with positive emotion, safety, and well-being. Scientific studies have shown that people who practice daily gratitude experience better sleep, stronger immune function, less depression, and higher levels of optimism. They are not ignoring reality, they're retraining their brains to see it more fully. When you fall asleep in a state of gratitude rather than stress, your nervous system enters a more relaxed state. Sleep becomes deeper, more restorative, and over time, this has a compounding effect on every area of your life: energy, creativity, relationships, and health. One of the most valuable aspects of this habit is that it builds emotional resilience. Life is unpredictable. There will always be challenges, disappointments, setbacks, but when you anchor your day with reflection and gratitude, you create a kind of emotional muscle memory. You remind yourself that even on hard days, there is something to learn. Even in pain, there is growth. Even in confusion, there is something to be thankful for. That mindset doesn't eliminate problems, but it does strengthen your ability to meet them with clarity and composure. This habit can take many forms. Some people write in a journal. Others speak their thoughts out loud. Some simply think through the day as they lie in bed. You can write down 3 things you're grateful for, note 1 lesson learned, or even visualize the moments that made you smile. The method doesn't matter, the intention does. What matters is that you're not letting the day end on autopilot. You're choosing to close it with awareness. This small daily ritual also builds self-trust. When you take time to look at your efforts, acknowledge your progress, and appreciate your growth, you reinforce a sense of identity. I am someone who pays attention. I am someone who values learning. I am someone who grows. That identity builds confidence, not because you're perfect, but because you're consistent. You're showing up for yourself every night. Over weeks and months, this habit starts to change the way you experience your life. You become more present, more grounded. You stop rushing through your days in survival mode and start engaging with them in a more thoughtful, intentional way. You develop a clearer sense of what matters, what drains you, what lifts you, and you begin to make better decisions, not just big life decisions, but small daily ones that align with your values and vision. In a culture obsessed with doing more, faster, better, reflection and gratitude offer something rare: peace. They remind you that life is not just a to-do list. It is a collection of moments, many of them worth appreciating. And when you learn to end each day by looking inward and looking back with both honesty and appreciation, you begin to wake up with more clarity, purpose, and joy. The habit is simple, but the impact is deep. Ending your day with reflection and gratitude doesn't just help you sleep better, it helps you live better. Helping one person each day without expecting anything in return is a deceptively simple habit, yet its impact reaches far beyond the person you assist. It's a small act that strengthens your character, deepens your emotional intelligence, and creates ripple effects in the lives around you. In a world that often emphasizes personal achievement, status, and success, choosing to extend kindness with no strings attached brings you back to something profoundly human: connection. It reconnects you to a deeper purpose and reminds you that fulfillment doesn't always come from getting, it often comes from giving. Helping someone daily doesn't have to mean grand gestures. It can be as small as holding the door for someone, sending a kind message, giving advice, offering your time, or simply listening. What matters is the intention behind it: to give your energy or effort to another human being purely for their benefit, without seeking recognition, reward, or validation. This type of giving builds humility because it pulls your focus away from yourself. It also builds empathy because it requires you to pay attention to others, not just what they say, but what they might need. When you make this a daily practice, you begin to notice more. You become more aware of who's struggling, who's quietly trying, who's in need of encouragement or support. In doing so, your perspective shifts. Your problems don't disappear, but they no longer consume you. You begin to understand that everyone is carrying something, and this understanding breeds compassion. Compassion, in turn, makes you stronger, not weaker. It gives you the ability to act wisely and kindly even under pressure. That emotional strength isn't something you find in books, it's something you earn through practice. There's also a profound psychological reward that comes with helping others. Neuroscience shows that acts of kindness trigger the release of serotonin, dopamine, and oxytocin chemicals that elevate your mood, create a sense of bonding, and reduce stress. When you help someone, your brain literally feels better. This is often referred to as the helper's high. But the true value lies not in the brief emotional boost. It's in the identity shift that happens over time. You begin to see yourself as someone who adds value to the world. You start to live less like a consumer of life and more like a contributor to it. This sense of contribution can anchor you during difficult seasons. When life feels chaotic, uncertain, or overwhelming, helping someone even in a small way reminds you that you still have power. You can still make a difference. That reminder can be incredibly grounding. You don't need to have all the answers or fix everything, but you can do one thing for one person today. That mindset gives you purpose, even when things feel out of control. Moreover, helping without expectation disrupts the transactional thinking that dominates so much of modern life. We often approach relationships, work, even social media with a subtle question in mind: what do I get from this? But when you practice selfless help, you're rewriting that question. You're saying, what can I give here? That change in mindset fosters trust and authenticity in your relationships. People can feel when you're genuine. They remember how you made them feel. And while the goal is never to be repaid, the irony is that generosity often creates unexpected returns, not always from the person you helped, but from life itself. Another hidden benefit of this habit is how it strengthens your leadership skills. Whether you lead a family, a team, or simply yourself, leadership at its core is about service. Great leaders don't dominate, they elevate. They look for ways to support, empower, and bring out the best in others. By helping someone each day, you sharpen the very skills that make a strong leader: listening, patience, humility, and consistent action. It's also worth noting that this habit helps dismantle ego. When you give without seeking credit, you're practicing detachment from your image. You're doing good for the sake of good, not for praise or attention. That kind of discipline builds inner freedom. It liberates you from needing approval and teaches you to act from values rather than vanity. Over time, this small act of daily service becomes a form of spiritual practice. It reminds you that your time, energy, and presence have value far beyond what can be measured. you become a force of quiet good in the world. And while you may never know the full extent of your impact, you can be certain that it matters. Because real change, whether personal or collective, often begins with the smallest consistent acts of kindness. So when you wake up each morning, consider this: who can I help today? Not for credit, not for return, just because I can. When that question becomes part of your daily rhythm, you begin to live a life not only of success, but of significance. And in the end, that is a life well lived.